Any health-related information on the following show provides general information only. Content presented on any show, by any host, or by any guest should not be substituted for a doctor's advice. Always consult your physician before you begin any new diet, exercise, or training program. And thank you for listening to the Whole Care Network.
Welcome to Healing Ties on the Whole Care Network. On Healing Ties, we're creating a life to love after caregiving ends by sharing stories and resources and being with awesome people like you. Now that caregiving has ended, let the Healing Ties begin. Here's your host, Chris McClellan, the Bow Tie Guy.
Well, greetings, everyone. It is Chris McClellan, the Bow Tie Guy, for another episodes of Healing Ties. Thanks for joining me today. Certainly want to send a hello and a shout out to all of our listeners in the UK on ukhealthradio.com. We thank you for your continued support of our little old podcast here on the Whole Care Network. And you know, on the Whole Care Network, we believe it's through story sharing where diversity meets the road to combat a common cause. And everybody has a story, but not everybody gets a chance to tell a story. And today, I'm excited because I get to talk to somebody from my hometown in St. Louis, who I had the privilege of meeting just a few weeks ago during my last visit to St. Louis. And Laura Boedges is an experienced wealth manager, certified financial planner, and certified divorce financial analyst. We're going to get into that a little bit here, who, as a divorcee herself, dedicates a large portion of her time to working with women and men and in transition. And we also know that caregivers are often find themselves in transition. And Laura, welcome to my little old podcast.
Good morning. I'm happy to be here.
It's great I'm talking to somebody from St. Louis. That makes it even better.
The Lou, baby.
The Lou. So we had I speak for myself. I had the pleasure of meeting you just, I guess it was in St. Louis in August, and our mutual friend, Carrie Berghoff, introduced us. And we immediately connected. At least that's kind of how I felt. I hope you felt.
It's true. It's all true.
And our listeners, at least our listeners from St. Louis will know that there's always these St. Louis questions, like where did you go to high school? And so, and that 6 degrees of separation, where we find out that we know a lot of people, even though we didn't know each other. And I think that's one of the things that's unique to St. Louis.
More like 3 degrees of separation around here.
Yeah, forget that 6 stuff. 3 degrees of separation. Yeah. But it's great to visit with you today. But before we get into our conversation, why don't you let our listeners know a little bit about you, your background, and we've just got a whole wealth of look at how I brought that wealth into the conversation. We have a whole wealth of things to talk about today.
Well, my story is not all pretty, but I can tell you that for the last 9.5 years, I've been in the financial services business. After coming out of a pretty nasty and stupid divorce, actually, it happened to be right at the time that the market crashed. So during the process of the loss of that relationship and some other craziness going on in my life, I actually lost a job in marketing at that time. And, if marketing tends to be the first thing that goes when the economy goes south. So I shouldn't be surprised that I got quote unquote laid off during that time. So the good, bad, and the ugly of that, though, is that the universe really delivered on the backside of that for me, because that was one of those God winks, if you will, that happens to people. When something bad happens, then something really great can happen on the backside of that. So coming out of marketing and advertising that I was doing, I found myself working for MetLife. And what a great opportunity that was. And I spent several years there until the next great opportunity came along, at which point I stepped out more into the wealth management arena. But while I was at Met and I got all of the appropriate licenses at that time, I also decided to try to take some of the lemons that I had been given in the divorce and turn them into lemonade.
Very
And
good.
when I found out that I could become a divorce financial analyst, that really spoke to me like, this is what I'm supposed to do. So I got that certification while I was at Met, but Met would not allow me to use it. They wouldn't allow me to put it on my business card or to use it in practice in any way, couldn't market to it. They were afraid I would try to practice law, which I absolutely don't do.
Yeah, I can see that, but goodness.
But the attorneys made the decision that it was not good for their business. So that was one of the reasons why I stepped away from MetLife. Subsequently, they sold to Mass Mutual, so it worked out fine for me at the time. But long story short, once I got out here, I was able to begin working in the divorce arena. And what I have since found is that helping people go through the end of one part of their life and step into another, whether it's divorce or the loss of a loved one, or even the loss of a loved one to a disease or a dementia or an Alzheimer's. It's a loss either way. And the transitions that have to happen financially are incredibly relevant and sometimes really difficult and sometimes painful because money has emotion attached to it.
Yes.
Money represents security and safety and the ability to have the life that you've been living without the threat of loss. And so any life transition is going to have some financial component to it. So I have found that as a certified divorce financial analyst and now a certified financial planner, that life transitions they're really where I spend my time and what I love to do for my clients and where I can really bring the most value.
Well, life transitions are, that word connects also with caregivers, and there's so many transitions that happen for caregivers and divorcees. I can see a similarity there that a lot of these things, when they happen, we're not prepared for it.
Oh, really? Right. Exactly. Even if we think we're prepared for it,
we're not.
Not always, no. In fact, I dare say that we prepare up to the actual event, but that we don't actually have anything prepared for what's on the other side of that. So,
right.
We can get all of the education and empowerment and training about the actual event itself, but then what? Now we're alone, or we're in different circumstances, or we have to move, or there are just a whole bunch of things that happen after the fact that no one even thought of.
Right, because nobody really anticipates being a caregiver, and you don't go into relationships anticipating that it's going to end. So people don't really make plans for, and I say this word very, very kindly, for tragedies.
Certainly not. That's one of those morbid thoughts that no one ever wants to spend any time at all entertaining.
Exactly, and that's where I think it comes back full circle to sharing stories, because it's where when we can share our story about our own personal experience, and even if it just touches somebody just a little bit that might be on the edge or on the verge of a change or transition, then it hopefully it turns that light on, and because from the caregiver's perspective, you don't want to be having these conversations in the ambulance on the way to the hospital.
Certainly not.
And then, I'm interjecting here. I hope you don't mind, but with you being able to share your story about your divorce so vividly, it's got to bring some comfort to men and women who might find themselves in the same position.
Well, yeah. If you think about it, we all know the statistics, right? The first marriages are going to fail 40 to 50% of the time. Mm-hmm. I've just been recently to 2 weddings, and I have 2 more to go here before Thanksgiving. And I watch the weddings, and I I just pray that these people make it, that their relationships make it, that they're in the 50 to 60% of first marriages that do make it. And I tell them, I don't ever want to see you in my office.
Yeah.
Unless you have wealth to manage, you can bring that to me every day, but I don't want to help you get through a divorce, right? So, I go back to the question you just asked me, because I think there was a story I wanted to tell there and I lost it.
Well, it's about how you're able to share your story as a divorcee that would, at least from my perspective, and at least for the people that I've talked to that are in the caregiving sphere, there's an instant understanding when you share your story. Okay. Even if the short stories are a little bit different, which they often are, we can find some comfort in knowing that there's a like-minded person because they've been through the experience.
Yeah, okay, so a couple of things are coming to mind and they're bubbling right up. So one of the things that I want to help people to avoid is the complete destruction of a family on the backside of a transition event. Mm-hmm. So what happened to me was that I went through this horrible divorce, and that was an 8-year marriage, and my son was, I want to say 8 when we got married, or when we met, 8 or 9, and his son was younger. He was 4 years younger than my son. But at the end, after spending 8 years, with these two boys growing up together over that 8 years, and my having helped to parent both of those boys during that time, I was told at the end that I was no longer allowed to talk to him, to my stepson. And we lost one another. And my son lost his stepbrother, and they both lost each other. Further, we all lost each other's families. And we loved each other's families. And that just didn't have to happen, but that came out of the really horrible standard litigated divorce process where one person hires an attorney, the other hires an attorney, and the duking it out starts. Mm-hmm. And it's really a horrible and broken process. In many, many cases, it doesn't work well and shouldn't be continued by any stretch of the imagination, except that marriage is a legal process. When you get married, you have to go down to the courthouse and get a license. And when you get divorced, you have to go back and have it legally terminated. So that the government can keep records. That's
really what it boils down to.
It really does.
Right.
It really does. But having said that, now that I've been doing this for the past 5 years, what I'm seeing is that many, many, many couples and families can work through this process without the destruction. I do a lot of mediation. I know a lot of attorneys and other social workers that do a lot of mediation. As a financial advisor doing mediation, I'm very different that way. And primarily the area that I'm going to work in with those couples is to help them figure out how to separate their assets. So, but during this time, what I've seen, and this is giving rise to another story or two. Right now, I've got a couple that she's got MS, and he's been taking care of her for a number of years, but she's not been an agreeable person or easy to get along with, and now he's just tired, and he wants to move on. And if we think about the length of time we're all going to live now, that even with MS or another type of a disease, I've got another couple right now. She's got Lyme's disease. They've been married. They have several children who are still small, but he can't take it anymore. She no sooner got Lyme's disease than her personality changed.
Wow.
She's not the same person he fell in love with and that he married and had these children with. And how hard is that, right? So now you're the caregiver having to leave the cared for because it's so hard to live with that person sometimes. Yes. Mm-hmm. And it's heartbreaking. It's heartbreaking for the caregiver to be the leavor. They don't
very much so.
They don't want to have to do that, but they also know that this person could live like that for a very long time, and it could be very awful.
Yeah, it's one of the lessons learned in caregiving, and I think as it relates to our topic today is the importance of self-care. And we often forget that in the midst of all this, I guess I'm just going to say life, when we're trying to take care of so many different things in our life. I didn't have children to take care of, but I respect that. But really, when it comes right down to it, it reverts back to self-care, and we often forget about how important that is when we're in the midst of these turmoil.
Yeah. Well, and I'm a caregiver myself in a way. I serve as not just a mediator, because I work often with individuals, and I wind up coaching them and supporting them, and it's very psychological. I don't have a lot of background in that except for my own experience, and the self-care that I gave to myself over the years in dealing with very difficult relationships and situations that I now come to be giving back. Several, I'll call them, like adult education or adult life training courses that I went through over the years to try to get more connected to who I am on the planet and why I'm here, and how can I make a difference with people while still continuing to take care of myself. So I'll get calls from my clients when they're upset about something that's happening in their life, either financially or otherwise. Inevitably, it comes down to a couple of things. And the first, and I don't know what your listeners will think of this. I guess some of them will accept and others will reject. But the first is walk in faith, because at the end of the day, we're souls more than humans.
Right.
And we interact with each other at that level. And if we believe in some sort of a higher power, then we may have a contract with that higher power individually. And who am I as a human to try to get in the way of somebody else's path with their higher power? So very beautiful. It's that spiritual component, I think, that is undeniable. We're leaving formal religion out of the conversation. Correct.
This is about spirituality and connecting to that higher power.
Correct.
And that means something different for everybody. And I think it's healthy to have those conversations.
Well, from my point of view, the way that I can stay whole and stay sane and stay healthy as I serve others is to do my second bit of advice usually, which is breathe deep. Take deep breaths. Air is my friend. Yes. Air is my friend.
I like that.
It really helps to get that really deep belly breath and breathe out all of that anxiety or stress I might be feeling. And on occasion, I will actually still take in somebody's pain, because I'm an empath that way. I can take that in and I can take that home, or I can feel that pain. I was talking to my son yesterday, whom, of course, because he's my son, I'm inextricably connected to.
Yes, I like that.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and he was recounting his latest painful relationship adventure, and it gave me a stomach ache. And I had to tell him and to tell myself, okay, take a really deep breath, and then go back to that walking in faith and remember that I can't fix that for him. He has to fix that for himself.
Right.
So when I'm working with my clients, oftentimes they will be in some sort of a painful situation, financially or otherwise, that requires that I stay connected but disconnected, so that I'm not feeling that pain.
Yeah, it's a delicate balance that we often find ourselves in when we're reaching out, and our profession is inclusive of helping people that are in some type of trauma.
Right. Well, or when we're personally helping and caregiving for someone.
Sure.
I'm in that sandwich generation where I have my kids, constantly having their issues and situations that require my love, support, and attention. But then also now my mom in particular, not my dad for the moment, that'll come later, I'm sure. But right now my mom is having a situation where she decided to downsize to try to get ahead of that so that I wouldn't have to be as involved or helping get her through that. Thank goodness, because she's a caregiver herself. She's 75, but she's taking care of others on a paid basis, but she comes to care for them very greatly on a personal level. And she sees what they go through, trying to give up a lifetime's worth of items and things, and what their families have to go through in that process. So she decided to downsize. She sold her home, which we're in a market which is selling very, very quickly right now, not enough inventory. So her house sold very quickly. And before she could buy a villa, she took a break. She came to stay with us, my husband and I, which was quite an adventure in and of itself.
Yeah.
And bought a villa during the time period that she was with us, though. She stored her belongings in a storage area. When we went to pick them up and move them to the new villa, which is beautiful and we're very excited, we open the door to the storage area and find that everything in there is covered in mold.
Oh.
2 storage areas in the same building. She lost everything. Now here she is. Think about this. Now she's a senior citizen. She's collecting her Social Security and taking RMDs and, basically living on a fixed income, but with whatever pocket income she makes, taking care of others. Now she needs the care of her family because we're in a situation with this loss of all of her life's belongings. It's almost like, Chris, it would have been better if there was a fire because that would have been final, but now we're able to see everything.
Yeah.
And it's all covered in mold, and we have to determine what can be saved. But in large part, most of it has to be trashed. And we literally, physically, hand by hand, have to pick it up and throw it away. So again, that story is another one of, okay, we're caring for each other and for others, and yet we have this moment. My mother's having this moment where she's having to say to me, I downsized so that you wouldn't have to be involved, and now I need you because I can't do all of this myself. You know what we did, Chris? We inadvertently brought a lot of that mold into the new villa.
Oh, I kind of wondered if that had not...
Now we have to have mold remediation in the villa before she can buy anything new and move it in. She's been 6 weeks now on an air mattress. She has 1 stool in her kitchen, and that is it.
Wow.
So, the long story and the lesson in that is, this goes full circle back to what we started talking about, which was, you're planning for the event, and you do a good job of, planning for the actual event, which in that case was, we're going to sell the house, we're going to store everything, and we're going to move it into a new place. Mm-hmm. She downsized. She did that beautifully. No one expected the complete loss of a lifetime's worth of belongings to mold. So now what? No one could plan for that, financially or otherwise.
Right.
So she had to come back and ask for help. She had to say, and it took her a few weeks to admit it, I can't do this on my own.
Asking for help is not a sign of weakness. It's a sign of strength, but we have to learn that in our own way.
She's a caregiver who needed to learn that lesson.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
She thought she had that all planned out. And at the end of the day, she didn't. And a lot of my clients that come through are in that same place. They'll have read all the books. They've come to my second Saturday divorce workshop.
Yep.
We've given them all of the resources and information and knowledge that they need. And yet, when the actual event happens, they're like, okay, wow, what?
It's that, maybe aha is not the right word, but it's that aha moment that when we realize that, we can't do this by ourselves. Our caregiving cape is limited, and we have to reach out for assistance. And who better than to reach out to assistance with somebody that understands?
Well, right, exactly. I think that's partly why I'm having a very good success in reaching people and helping people. People come from all over the place and from different resources or from different people who send people to me. Mm-hmm. But I think in large part it's because I understand, because I've been there, because I've seen that.
Comes full circle.
It does. I have a number of peers who haven't been divorced, but who want to work in the arena. And my sense of it is that they do well, and they may not be connecting with everybody that comes to them.
Right. Yeah, I think when you've been in the trenches, you have a little bit better understanding of where somebody's coming from, even though our stories are different.
Right, exactly. So I want to take this moment, though, to mention a couple of things. So for your listeners. So first, whenever you have a life transition, or if you're working with a client that's having a life transition, ask them or ask yourself, have you contacted the professionals in your life that can help you? Because I have started to form for my clients through a lot of great work in meeting people over the years, what I call the Red Cape Brigade. And the Red Cape Brigade is that group of professional advisors who surround that person who is going through that transition. So in a divorce case, that's going to be, of course, your divorce attorney. Even if you're mediating or friendly with your soon-to-be ex, you still want to have that legal representation to make sure that you're not missing something or that you're not making a bad legal decision that's going to harm you later. Mm-hmm. But in any transition, your first call needs to be to your financial advisor. And the first call after a partner or someone that you love has transitioned needs to be to their financial advisor. Because if the financial advisor has done a good job with them, they will have access to all of the other professionals. They will know who the attorney is and who the CPA is and where the trust is held and where all of the items for life insurance are. So that first professional really should be that person's financial advisor and or their trust attorney.
Because in the middle of a transition, whether it's a divorce or death, we are out of sorts. And,
absolutely.
And to have that objective third person who is working for you that can say, okay, take a step back. I have this covered for you. I'm there for you.
Yes.
And it comes back full circle. You have to have these plans in place before the emergency happens.
Right. So if you've done a good job of planning, even if you don't know what to do first on the backside, you've got that group of professionals you can contact, that you can reach out to. The ones that, that Red Cape Brigade might even include a great therapist. A coach of some sort, somebody that can hold your hand and walk you through it. I see people come through these transitions beautifully when they do that.
That's the analogy that I have with the caregiving cape is that it's red and it's got a big S on the back for Superman. And
yes.
That's another area that how we connect. I think we should explore that. That we should do a little bit of a skit on that with a. That would be fun. That would be fun. So goodness, I can't believe we just have a couple of minutes left, and we didn't even really talk too much about your workshop that you do every month. You talk a little bit about that. Let our listeners know how they can get in touch with you, and then why don't we schedule another podcast and we can specifically talk about your second Saturday workshops in St. Louis? How would you like that?
Okay. Absolutely. So second Saturday, St. Louis. Is the St. Louis episode, I guess, because Second Saturday is a licensed workshop that's happening now in 100 different markets. So if you know somebody that has to go through a divorce, it's always a good idea to check that market to see if the workshop is available there. We do the legal, emotional, and financial aspects of going through the process. It's 3.5 jam-packed hours. With an attorney, family law attorney, a therapist, and a financial advisor. So you're really getting great expert advice on how to get through the process. Most of the people that ever take the workshop always tell me at the end, I feel so much better. I'm empowered now, and I'm better educated, and I know where to go now to get answers to my questions, because family law attorneys just don't always answer all the questions. They just don't.
It takes a team. That whole analogy about a village. That's why it's important to have an attorney, a financial planner, a social worker. It's all these folks that caregivers end up in that role, but when you can have somebody on your team that can help you along the way, because as for caregiver, you're the CEO, you're the chief everything officer, and you often play these roles. And it's the same. I just the connection with divorcees is just the same. You play these roles, and you're in an emotional roller coaster. And I know I'm the poster child for what not to do after caregiving ends, because I didn't reach out for help. So that's why I'm doing what I'm doing, to help people take that next step, so that their transition can be just a little bit easier.
Grief is the same process, regardless of whether it's the loss of a relationship in a family or the loss of a loved one to death. So same process.
We could do a whole show on that one.
Yeah, we could. Yeah, we could.
So, Laura, let our listeners know how they can reach you, all your contact information.
Okay, so for the workshop, that would be Second Saturday. Spell out the two words, Second and Saturday, STL.com. Or if you're coming from another part of the country, just go to secondsaturday.com and look for your location. In St. Louis, I can be reached at 314-598-4068. I work for the firm of Hightower St. Louis Wealth Advisors.
Well, it's just a delight having you on the show today. And, Laura, with all the great work that you're doing in the St. Louis community for people in and around caregiving and people who are going through divorce, you are certainly someone who's creating healing ties all around us. I can't thank you enough for sharing your wisdom with us today.
Well, thank you for including me.
What a great visit with Laura today. And I think it goes without saying that when we can find the strength and the comfort to share just a little bit about our story, then not only does that help us, it also provides some insights for people who are struggling with some of the similar issues that we all do as it relates to caregiving, as it relates to divorce, because change is hard. And I so appreciate Laura and her honesty and willingness to share so much about her personal life and how she's making a difference to all the folks that she's serving in St. Louis. Well, that does it for this episode of Healing Ties. As you know, I'm your host, Chris McClellan, the Bowtie Guy. I'm creating a life to love after caregiving ends through radio, writing, travel, advocacy, and being with awesome people like Laura Boedges. Healing Ties is a part of the Whole Care Network. Check us out online at thewholecarenetwork.com, where you can learn about all of our podcast and show hosts. We'll see you for another episode of Healing Ties real soon. Bye-bye.